Good evening, everyone. We are in the regular business meeting of the District of Squamish for December 5th. Welcome to Follow please Telephone, Possibly Homish, Oweomayo. Welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. There is an agenda in front of Council, and I'm looking for a motion to adopt. Moved by Councillor Kent, second by Councillor Chappell. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, we don't have any delegations, proclamations, or petitions, and consideration of unscheduled public comments. Kaylee? No? Moving on, we have a public hearing, and I will read off the public hearing statement before we start. This public hearing is convened pursuant to Part 14, Division 3 of the Local Government Act to allow the public to make representations to Council respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaws. District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2000-2011 amendment bylaw secondary suite amendments number 2566-2017. District of Squamish zoning bylaw 2000-2011 amendment bylaw tobacconist amendments number 2567-2017. District of Squamish zoning bylaw 2000-2011 amendment bylaw accessory kitchen amendments number 2568-2017. District of Squamish zoning bylaw 2000-2011 amendment bylaw electric vehicle charging amendments number 2569-2017. District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200-2011 amendment bylaw cash and lieu CD2 amendments number 2570-2017, and District of Squamish fiscal new plan bylaw number 2100-2009 amendment bylaw DPA 2 and 7 number 2571-2017. Everyone present shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaw. No one will be discouraged or prevented from making their views known. However, it is important that remarks be restricted to the matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Members of Council may ask questions following presentations. However, the function of Council at a public hearing is to listen rather than to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw. In considering the proposed bylaws, Council has received documents which may influence its decision. These documents are available for review and comment and have been included as part of the Planning Department report, or if received later, handed out at the meeting and included in the public hearing package. If any documents are submitted during the hearing, please feel free to review the document during the hearings by asking staff. Members of the public shall maintain order and quiet and shall not applaud or interrupt any speech or action of members of Council or any other person addressing Council. I now call on the Planning Department to introduce the bylaws. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the community joining us tonight. My name is Brian Daly, Development and Subdivision Coordinator, and this is Jesse Fletcher, Planner with the Community Planning Department. Tonight's public hearing is for 6 proposed bylaws that together make up the 2017 zoning bylaw update e-bus amendments, including a set of minor amendments to the official community plan development permit areas. The bylaw amendments, which are the subject of tonight's public hearing, are listed above.
So the first set of amendments seeks to address the limited supply of ground-oriented rental housing in existing residential neighborhoods. To do this, the proposed amendments will introduce the term accessory dwelling unit to differentiate between secondary suites and detached suites. It will allow for both an accessory dwelling unit and a secondary suite on the same lot as a single-family home. I will introduce a greater variety of housing forms, including walk-off suites and fourplexes, and defines cooking facilities to help with the enforcement of unpermitted suites. Public comments received include 3 comments in support of permitting 2 suites on the same lot. 1 comment suggested requiring accessibility if an owner is proposing a ground-oriented suite. 1 comment received supported permitting 2 suites on the same lot, but raised concern about suites being used as an Airbnb rental. Based on this public feedback, staff proposed amending this bylaw to define short-term rental to the use of a dwelling unit as a rental for less than 30 days. And to prohibit its use in secondary suites, accessory dwelling units, and walk-off suites.
Tobacconist amendments. This amendment proposes defining tobacconist, which would include the retail sale of all tobacco products, vaporizers, e-cigarettes, and their accessories. This amendment also regulates the siting of tobacco and vapor product shops in a similar manner to marijuana dispensaries requiring buffers from schools and along Cleveland Avenue. Public comments received. 3 comments were received in favor of regulating tobacconists near schools.
Accessory kitchens. This amendment proposes modifying the definition of dwelling unit to remove the language permitting 2 kitchens. 2 kitchens will still be permitted, however, the second kitchen will be considered an accessory kitchen and will be regulated in the general regulations. This will still allow different dwelling types to have 2 kitchens, however, will limit their location within the building and specify under which conditions it will be considered a suite. And it will also help ensure that they meet minimum building code requirements. Public comments received include 2 comments in support and 1 not in support of regulating second kitchens.
Electric vehicle charging amendments. This amendment proposes requiring shared access to level 2 charging receptacles in new multifamily developments. Staff propose including minimum requirements for access to electric vehicle charging receptacles for 20% of the required off-street parking stalls in any shared parking areas for multifamily use, excluding visitor parking stalls. 5 comments were received supporting requiring access to electric vehicle charging receptacles. 1 comment suggested including the requirement in future commercial developments.
Council directed staff to increase the cash in lieu amount for required off-street parking spaces. Staff are in the process of drafting a payment in lieu of off-street parking space bylaw, therefore section 41.2C of the zoning bylaw needs to be amended to refer to this new bylaw. The CD2 amendment proposes amending the wording of section 40B to allow non-market rental dwelling units secured with a housing agreement to exceed the maximum allowable density of the zone. Currently, the maximum density of the CD2 zone is 660 units, and there are currently 452 units built. This amendment allows for the development of non-market housing on-site, specifically for the proposed Senior Center Housing Society development on 3rd Avenue. No comments have been received to date.
Development Permit Area 2 and Development Permit Area 7 amendments. Development Permit Area 2 regulates the form and character of commercial and multi-unit residential development in downtown Squamish, as shown on Schedule J1 of the official community plan. The current layout of the Development Permit Area 2 map is not aligned with the most recent District of Squamish downtown neighborhood plan. Development Permit Area 7 regulates the form and character of all multi-family development outside of downtown Squamish. Currently, there are some properties in downtown Squamish that are not captured by either Development Permit Area 2 or Development Permit Area 7. These properties, however, are identified as part of downtown Squamish on Schedule B of the official community plan. These amendments propose amending the Development Permit Area 2 downtown map to ensure consistent development permit area coverage. This approach would capture any new multi-unit development in the downtown area by ensuring they are subject to development permits for form and character. This slide shows the current Development Permit Area 2 map on the left and the proposed Development Permit Area 2 map on the right. No comments were received to date.
Staff implemented a consult level on the IAP2 participation spectrum for this project. Notices were sent and delivered to property owners and tenants within 100 meter of the property-specific rezoning. A notice of public hearing was published in the Squamish Chief on November 23rd and 30th, 2017. Notice of the public hearing was also advertised on the district website. 2 letters of support of staff's recommendations was received today and were added to the report package.
Staff recommend that council approve the following resolutions. That the District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200.
We're gonna, that's
sorry.
another part of the agenda.
Just to clarify, we are proposing a change to the 3rd reading, so maybe just worthwhile stating what that change would be in response to the public comments that we've received in this
I
motion.
thought you had already outlined that, but that's okay. Okay. Go ahead.
We are proposing amending by inserting the following definition under Clause 2, Section 1, interpretation. Short-term rental means the use of a dwelling unit or any portion of it as a rental unit for a period of less than 30 days and includes vacation rentals and bed and breakfasts. By inserting at the end of 4.5 secondary suites, not be permitted for use as a short-term rental. By inserting at the end of section 4.38 accessory dwelling units, not be permitted for use as a short-term rental. and by inserting at the end of section 4.39, multi-unit flex unit not be permitted for use as a short-term rental.
Awesome. Council, any questions for staff about any of the bylaws and OCP? Yeah.
Thanks. On this accessory dwelling unit, it was amended, I'm reading it right now, I'm pretty sure it includes downtown now, is that correct? I just wanted to make sure that was in there, thank you. And I just want to say thank you to staff for amending that, I think that's a highly valuable amendment, I really like the new.
Okay, question, we're in the question, it's a public hearing, not anything other than that, so.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Pryor, question?
Yeah, thank you. On the e-charging, one of the questions that was asked or recommended, would the e-charging be in the future commercial developments? I mean, someone asked that question or suggested that it is. E-chargers are, right?
Maybe outline what's currently in the bylaw? for
Well,
clarity?
it's more to answer the question or whatever it is. I mean, I'm pretty sure that e-charging is in our future commercial developments. We're requiring e-charging, or we're getting there.
Not in this specific
No.
amendment, we are not, but
To answer that person that wrote that comment, that's how it's okay.
Mr. Manescas?
If I may clarify, at this point, we are proposing only e-charging requirements for multifamily residential development, so commercial development, it wouldn't trigger an e-charging requirement.
But we are working on that.
I think this is the first step, and then we will, we may come back in 2018 and revisit that issue as we do the zoning bylaw update.
I think on this type of thing, people are gonna have to do it to remain relevant and competitive. But this is the first step in insisting on it. But I suspect all new developments, to actually be able to give that value added to whoever their customers are gonna start doing it as a matter of course, but off topic. Question, clarification?
I'm wondering why 20%, of stalls, I'm just wondering how that number was arrived at, as opposed to 30% or a higher number when the price of the infrastructure is what the initial cost of the infrastructure, putting in the plugs is.
So what was the rationale for 20% versus more or less? How did you arrive at that number?
Yeah,
So we looked at staff looked at other zoning bylaws to see what was being required, and 20% seemed, of the two bylaws that required it were there, and then we did the math and how much that would cost. So 20% shared may only mean if you had 100 stalls, 10 stalls, or 10 charging stations between two stalls. So we felt, and there's a table in the original report that showed the cost between that, it was a reasonable starting point moving forward. And looking at, again, electric vehicle charging ownership in Squamish at this time, or in British Columbia, I'm sorry. It seemed like a reasonable first step.
Follow-up question?
no, it's more of a comment, I'd like to change that, I'd like to amend that.
Okay, we would do that at third reading, correct? Yeah, we consider that at third reading. Councillor Elliott?
The amendments to the secondary suite aspect of the bylaws makes it clear about how we want people to use them, but it doesn't replace our need to still develop a short-term rental policy for the district. Is that correct?
That is correct.
This is but one tool.
Yes, it's just a matter of clarifying that these are not, it wasn't apparently obvious in our bylaw that that you can have a bed and breakfast in the secondary suite, so it's just about clarifying for the purpose of these amendments.
Council, any more questions for clarification? Seeing none? Where am I? And now invite the applicant or representative to comment on the proposed rezoning, after which persons affected may be given the opportunity to speak. After I've confirmed it is your turn, please approach the podium, commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. Please note that speakers will be given up to 5 minutes to address council. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the proposed bylaws? I'll ask for a second time, is there anyone who'd like to speak to the proposed bylaw? I'll ask for a third time, is there anyone who wishes to make any further representations? Being none, I will give council one last chance to ask a question for clarification. Seeing none, there be no further speakers, I would now remind everyone that council can't hear any new information between the closing of the public hearing and third reading. And that if you do have those comments, please direct them to staff. And I now declare the public hearing closed. Is that all right? Okay. Thank you. Next up, 7A1, District of Squamish Fees and Charges, bylaw number 2012-2007, amendment bylaw 2575.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Linda Clausen. I'm the Manager of Financial Services. Today in front of you, you have the Fees and Charges bylaw number 2012-2007, amendment bylaw 2575-2017 for the first three readings. Every year during the budget process, Council sets utility rates for the following year. Last year, changes in rates, due dates, and penalties called for more comprehensive updates of the fees and charges, as well as all the related bylaws, which would be the water, sewer, and solid waste. This year, staff is recommending the amendment of only the fees and charges bylaw. Last month, staff presented the draft utility budget to Council, and as a result of those budget discussions, staff is recommending an increase in the water rates of 2% and an increase in the solid waste collection fees of about 2.5% to 2.7% based on their tote size. The implementation of the Water Master Plan requires sustainable funding for expansion to accommodate growth and replacement and upgrade of aging infrastructure. The increase in growth and the 2% recommended increase in rates will contribute to both the funding formula so that the utility can meet the revenue requirements of 4 to 6% per year as identified in the Water Master Plan. In the solid waste rates, to continue to encourage residents to reduce waste and stretch the life of the landfill, staff is recommending solid waste increases of about 2.5%. $5 will be for the small tote, $7 will be for the medium tote, and $10 for the large tote. Tipping fees have also increased. We will see about a $5 per unit for the mattresses and the mixed waste. Although sewer rates were reviewed, the sewer rates that we currently are experiencing are sufficient enough to contribute to the reserve, and especially when growth is considered. Staff has reviewed the draft utility plans with Council, and they have provided direction into these 2018 rates. As a summary, as a result of these increases, the average household with a medium garbage tote will pay an additional $15 a year for their utilities.
In their entirety, all
Yeah.
three?
Yeah, all three.
Thank you very much, and I will go to council for some questions, but I do want to say good job. I think this is the first year I've been on council where I really feel like our financial planning for our utilities is to a point where we're not seeing massive increases like we had been for probably the last 8 or 9 years. And that's a lot of kudos to staff who have kept us on track in terms of financial management there. I know in my second term, we made some really tough decisions because we realized our utilities were not in good shape. We didn't have the reserves to do the maintenance and the operational things that we needed to and the upgrades. And we were on a very tough path of multiple 10 and 15-year increases for a 65% increase over 5 years, which was really hard. And I know it was hard on the utility users, but both with particularly with their sewer, we're in a good place with our sewer. Our water, we're in a pretty good place with our water too, but we feel it's prudent to at least keep up with inflation and make sure it's really, really solid. And as you know, our solid waste is a fairly new utility, so we're still in the process of growing that reserve to be able to have the monies within the utility to manage the utility properly. But I just want to say kudos to staff. I think it's been probably 7-8 years of pain on the utility front, and we're seeing some of that gain today. I think the other piece that maybe you didn't highlight was that we have, within this year, we're sort of seeing some of the fruition of the infill development actually now paying into utilities, and we'll see the tax, the general tax one soon, but we're actually seeing some of that benefit of the density actually helping to take some of the burden off of our very spread out infrastructure. And I know there was several hundred new utility users sort of coming into the program in 2017, and that really helps for us to be able to manage these utilities in a financial way, and you can see that. I haven't seen utilities not go up for a long, long time, so I know it's nice to see that hard work for the last 7-8 years start to really pay off. Good job. Any comments or questions about these 3 bylaws in front of us? Do you have one more comment?
It's just the one bylaw.
Sorry, one bylaw for the, you're right, sorry. Anybody else? Okay, is there anyone who wishes to move this? Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Chappell. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Good job, guys. Moving on, council can consider first 3 readings of the public hearing that was earlier today. I'll do these one off. Would anyone like to move the secondary suites amendment bylaw number 2566/2017, moved by councillor? As amended? As amended. As amended, with that addition. Moved by councillor Elliott, seconded by councillor Race. Any comments or questions? I think it was really a valuable input, the person who brought that in about making some clarity about what the intention of this is. So thank you, public, for contributing to that. Good job. Anybody else want to comment? Don't see any hands. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next is tobacconist amendments, number 2567/2017. Moved by councillor Kent, seconded by councillor Elliott. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next up is accessory kitchen amendments, number 2568. Moved by councillor Pryor, seconded by councillor Race. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Would anyone like to move the electrical vehicle charging amendments 2569, moved by councillor Elliott, seconded by councillor Chappell. Councillor Chappell?
Yeah, I'd like to see this move to 30%. I think that most car companies right now are moving to China with China moving to 100% electric vehicles by 2025, which is not too far away. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for plugs to be for low-level charging spaces to be in residential buildings. It's not commercial buildings.
Why don't you move an amendment,
Yeah,
and then you
maybe
can
an amendment, not
move that we amend this to be
30%.
30% and not 20%?
I just like to hear the thoughts of staff, if it's too onerous or...
Amendment's been moved. Is there a seconder? I'll second the amendment for discussion. Do you want staff to comment on 30 versus 20?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So right now, 20%, we looked at 3 different developments downtown and what it would cost to add electrical vehicle chargers. So it looks like if they're shared between multiple stalls, so one charger to service multiple stalls, the main development, which was 110 units, would be about $41,000 to put that in. Sirocco development would be about $67,000 to put it in. So it's a small step forward, but we felt that we didn't want to introduce a significant step right away because, first of all, these are numbers that BC Hydro has advised us of. We haven't ground truthed those numbers with specific developments. So I think once we enroll this program, we'll get a much better idea of how much this actually costs. And then we can always come back and increase that to 30% or whatever council deems necessary.
How easy is it to retrofit buildings after they're put up? Once they have the infrastructure, how easy is it to ask as a requirement for that number to go from 20 to 30% after the fact?
Just before we go on, I just want to make sure that there's no new information. We did discuss possibility of increasing the percentage in the public hearing. I just want to make sure we're not jeopardizing the public hearing, and if we do, obviously we have to.
If you're not changing the use and the density that's proposed in the bylaw, you're not changing
Okay,
it,
even if we have
basing it on
new
information that you've
questions.
received.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. But, well,
You want to think
what you're
about that?
debating is whether or not you're amending the bylaw at third as opposed to,
We're debating an amendment from 20 to 30.
and how hard it is
I just want
to retrofit it.
Go- Continue.
Yeah.
I'm looking for Robin to wink at me if
Well,
we're urging on
Yeah,
Okay,
new
for,
information.
I don't know
Yeah,
that it's contrary though. It's not contrary to what
The
the
intent.
pub, or even that you've heard from the public.
Okay. Keep going.
now my concern is that if we do get required to have electric infrastructure here in the same way that other countries are doing and everybody's moving towards electric vehicles, it's a large amount, we're gonna probably not look at this for a while. And there's a large amount of developments that are happening right now, and they're significant. So this will affect a large portion of our downtown, a large portion of the waterfront landing. So why wouldn't we be a little bit more robust and ask for it? I mean, if it's a difference of $10,000 or like $50,000 with the amount of density that, and real estate values, and they actually increase the value of a property. So they can get that money back from selling the units at a higher rate if they include the electric vehicle. So I'm not sure why we're being concerned.
So you're
about-
arguing for 30.
Yeah, I'm just, why would we be concerned? We want to do the best in the interest of the public, not concerned as much if this is a positive use for public access to electric vehicles. And plus, I would argue that we only ask for 1.4, how many parking spaces per unit
It depends where you are.
downtown?
Downtown, it's 1 space per unit.
That's right. So if it's one space per unit, and those units are going, I think it's going to be difficult to start, but if people have an electric vehicle, maybe they'll make that choice because they have the infrastructure. Whereas if they don't have the infrastructure, maybe the choice would be different. So it's going to affect it's going to affect future carbon.
At this point, you're trying to convince us, not them.
Right.
Just so you know. Councillor Pryor.
I thought about this when we originally discussed it, and basically every car charging station takes a 40 amp breaker. So that's the same as your stove or your dryer. So it's a significant amount of extra energy coming in. But like listening to staffs talking about, they've done the research in other areas, and I kind of sometimes wonder why we don't break new ground instead of following the trend, but sometimes following the trend makes sense. The driverless car is coming, and car share is coming, and all these things, but if it's staff's wisdom 20%, I feel it should be 50%, but, so how's that for a non-answer?
Councillor Race.
Thank you. I just want to clarify through the staff, were the numbers, the values, or the costs you just stated, is that for the 20% or would that be for the 30%?
That was for the 20%.
So it'd be 50% more probably, presumably, in each case for 30%.
1,500 to 2,000 a plum.
Just wanted to know that there aren't that many jurisdictions in BC that have these minimum requirements. So although we are following the few others that are doing this, you know, I would say we are breaking new ground in this area. And I think whenever you go from zero to something, you don't want to take it too of a significant step. We can always come back and revisit this issue like we've done with the secondary suites. We've kind of incrementally increased that. So I think there will be room in the future, but when we do come back, we'll have a better understanding of what it actually costs.
Councillor Elliott.
Philosophically, I support more plugs the better, but this time I'm going to speak against the amendment. I know at UBCM, a motion went to the province to look at requiring this at the provincial level so that at least the province was looking at it across the board. So that might influence us over the next year. I also know that we're working on inclusionary zoning and trying to incentivize low market rental and market rental, and I think all of these things combined, I'd rather start at this level, and because we're doing zoning bylaw amendments each year, if there's flavor and an opportunity to put it up next year, I think we can do that. But I think this is a good starting point. I'd like to see how this sort of all falls out with the other policy pieces that are coming forward.
Thank you. Councillor Chappelle.
Thanks. I'm really glad to have had the dialogue. I think that's a lot more interesting things to take into account. It is philosophical for me as well, but I also wonder, you know, when you're building a building that lasts that long and it's cheaper to put in the infrastructure when you start as opposed to retrofitting, nobody generally retrofits. And when you have the, like, to me, it's the choice that you make when you buy a place and you're going out to shop for a car and you have electric infrastructure, it's so much easier to make the decision to invest in a vehicle. And we want people to move into electric vehicles. And so for me, 30% isn't that different for a developer. I'm wondering if we could put something in it. I hear Councillor Elliott's concern about rental housing and having cheaper housing, but I generally think that they're expensive cars, and maybe we can have some sort of exclusion for low-income housing, or I'm not sure if there's something that can be tweaked, but I am going to vote for 30% because I think it is where we have to go, and these buildings are going to be around for a long time. It's cheaper to put in now for a developer than it is to retrofit. So I think it would be a bold step that shows commitment to change away from fossil fuels vehicles, and I think 20% is following along, but I think we actually want to move the needle, and we have a large amount of density being built. So to put in 30%, I don't think that be that much of a burden on the developer. And there's a lot of ways that you can actually do it with small advertising packages and third-party suppliers now. I don't think it's that onerous.
Councillor Reyes.
Thank you. Just speaking to the amendment, I suppose you could argue that we should require it in 100% now because it'd be cheaper than putting it in later, but I think that begs the question of whether that's just the right step to take at this time. And I'm content with 20%. And I think this is the right first step to take. We can come back later. We talked about it with respect to possibly adding them to commercial units. And that can happen in another review later on in the coming year. So I'm content with 20% at this time. I don't want to get into the debate whether Squamish will go to the same level of electric cars as something like Metro Vancouver will, but we are a little bit different, and so it may not be quite as quickly here. So I'm content with 20% at this time.
Yeah,
And therefore we'll vote against the amendment.
On the amendment, I think everyone's in agreement that ideally we will ultimately need more. I think this smart developers out there will start to actually do much more than 20%, much more than 30%, because that's the competitive advantage, and that's where the future is. In 5 years and 10 years from now, this building's gonna be up. Any of these buildings will be up. And unless you have a significant amount of electrical charging vehicles, you won't get the sales. So I know that that's a big worry for existing multifamily that are currently actually already built today. They're worried that they will have devalued condo, townhome prices because their current development has no electrical charging. And they will not be relevant in a new market where that is going to be the norm and that is going to be the demand. So I think the smart developers are going to put more than 20% in anyway. And that's going to come sooner than we think. So I think I'm going to support the amendment because I don't think it is probably maybe 40 or 50% above what we're asking. It's not going to break the banks. I think it will actually, you actually be able to, the developer will actually be able to get that revenue back in the development of the condominium. So I'm happy to push the envelope a little on this and go with the amendment at 30%. Councilor Carter.
Yeah, only because I know how much it's gonna cost to retrofit. I mean, I'm putting in an electric charge station for my wife's new car, and I barely have enough power in the house to do it. So if someone builds 100 units and plans in 20 car charges, chances are it'll be a real big buck for them to pull in a bigger wire. So I'll support the amendment.
I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Councillor Elliott, Councillor Race opposes. The motion amendment carries. So on the main motion as amended. Any other comments on this one? As Jonas said, I think,
Only comment to look going forward is, as we talk about 20% of required off-street parking stalls, we do talk about it being shared access. So it's not a per stall access.
No, it would be essentially 20% of the parking stalls have to have access to it. So you could have one charging station with multiple prongs, charging multiple parking stalls.
so it might not be a 50-fold increase to go from 20 to 30.
Well, the numbers that I mentioned were assuming that they were shared.
Yeah, but if we're sharing 10% more, we're still sharing.
20 people sharing, or 20% sharing meaning 40%, or 10% sharing meaning 20%?
No. Go ahead.
Okay, so 20% of parking stalls having access to a charger. So you could have a charger that services 2 or 3 parking stalls.
Maybe even 4, depending on how it's configured. So it's not necessarily just a straight mathematical equation.
That's right. We don't know.
Well,
So on the motion, we're not going to re-debate the amendment.
yeah. The ironic part is the places with the parking stalls will be more valuable than ones not.
Absolutely. There's a business case for developers to go as well. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to District of Squamish zoning bylaw, cash and new CD2 amendments number 2570. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Pryor. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And District of Squamish official community plan bylaw 2100/2009 amendment bylaw DPA 2 and 7 number 2571/2017. Third reading, moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Elliott. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Adoption for consideration, District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200/2011 amendment bylaw Cleveland large lot interim FAR number 2572-2017 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Ray, second by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. District of Squamish fees and charges by law number 2012-2007, amendment by law 2573-2017 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Pryor, second by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Staff reports, community planning infrastructure, wastewater treatment plant, asset plan, and pre-design award contract. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is David Rolston. I'm a municipal engineer with the District of Squamish. The objective of today's report is seeking Council's authorization to award a consulting services contract for a wastewater treatment plant, asset management plan, and pre-design for process upgrades. Some background is that the district's wastewater treatment plant has a value of $47 million, which is about 11% of the district's total infrastructure value. It's a significant asset that treats all of the district's wastewater and maintains clean and safe water in the Squamish River for protection of the environment and recreationalists. This project has two key tasks related to the wastewater treatment plant. The first task is to prepare a wastewater treatment plant specific asset management plan. The 2011 asset management plan noted that the district doesn't have a detailed inventory of all our wastewater treatment plant equipment and components, and it recommended collecting that inventory data and completing condition assessments for all of the components in order to improve our asset management practices. So this task will provide a detailed inspection and collection of inventory data for all of the wastewater treatment plant components, and it will prepare detailed repair and rehabilitation program, as well as determining the funding requirements in order to maintain the wastewater treatment plant. The second task is related to upgrading the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant. The district's liquid waste management plan reviewed the capacity of the plant and provided recommendations for ongoing upgrades to accommodate community growth and maintain compliance with our discharge permit. The liquid waste management plan identified at a high level the preferred means of upgrading the capacity using an innovative technology that allows for increasing the capacity of the plant without increasing the footprint. But there are some implications with that approach, including some additional infrastructure, which carries additional costs. And so the liquid waste management plan recommended further study at the design stage in order to confirm that this is the best option. And so the second task of this project will complete a pre-design that evaluates all of the options in detail and confirms the optimal approach. In terms of the budget, the two different tasks are covered by two separate budgets. The first is from a special operating project called the Wastewater Treatment Plant Condition Assessment, which was budgeted for $40,000 in 2017. The cost of that task in the proposal was only for $25,000, so any unspent budget would be put back towards sewer reserves. And the second task will be funded from a small portion of a DCC project called the Wastewater Treatment Plant Older Bioreactor Upgrade. We've budgeted $165,000 in 2017 and $935,000 in 2018. That's for construction. So we would only use a very small portion of that, and any unspent funds would go towards detailed design and construction of the upgrades in 2018. In terms of procurement, staff issued a request for proposals on BC Bid, and we received two competitive proposals. The district's evaluation team found that GHD's proposal and their team provided the best value to the district. They have a comprehensive and qualified team, and staff are confident in their ability to deliver a quality project. So the recommendations are that the District of Squamish award the consulting services contract for the wastewater treatment plant asset management plan and pre-design for process upgrades to GHD at a cost of $97,797, and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the contract or execute the agreement.
Any questions? Yeah, question?
What's the timeline on that plan?
We hope to be done by February, March. And then hopefully that will then launch right into detailed design and be building next year.
So how often do we update this assessment, asset management plan on the treatment plant?
This will be our first one. So it's the first one, and then it would probably be reasonable to set a 5-year timeline to update the plan.
question about pros and cons of pre-design versus full design versus design build at a later stage.
So pre-design is typically before we're actually getting into preparing detailed drawings and tender specifications. Pre-design is really to determine what approach we're going to take that will then be detailed design. So you could do a pre-design and then, or you could create a consulting contract that does pre-design and then detailed design. But in this case, it's hard to scope a project like that without knowing what approach we're going to take, and it's difficult for consultants to determine their scope of work because it's indeterminate. We don't know what is going to be the best approach, and the cost could be, of engineering could be more for one option than the other. So in this case, we thought, given that we're not sure which direction we're going to go, we thought it was most appropriate to do a pre-design. Once we have determined the best option, then we would put another contract out or RFP out to do the detailed design.
And is the next step detailed design, design build, or would it be detailed design and then a separate contractor for build, or what's your, or the pre-design going to determine that?
Typically for a contract of this size, it would be, I would recommend that we do a detailed design and then we go to another, our tender, put it out to tender. Design builds are common for very large projects. And there's a whole list of pros and cons associated with that probably
I was
is.
just trying to get in my brain where this may be heading, and okay, that's helpful. Any other questions? I don't see any. So there's someone who wants to move that we we assign the consulting services to GHD, the cost of $97,797, and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the contract for agreement. Moved by Councillor Pell, second by Councillor Race. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. 8A2, C11 Central Sanitary Lift Station Electrical Upgrade Tender Award.
I brought a few props. Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Matt Simmons. I'm the district's capital project manager. The first report before you is for C11, which is our central lift station. And I've been in council a number of times in the last 2 years as we've been working on significant capacity upgrades there. This is the lift station that's located around the Aqua development downtown. The current report's before you to award some of the electrical work. We've been upgrading that capacity, but the final piece is the third pump, which we've already purchased and have in our hands. And what we need to do is just go in there and complete the rewiring of this pump and the associated control cabinet that controls the entire lift station. This is a project that is of high priority to us in the sanitary system and is one of the short-term recommendations in our sanitary master plan that's currently sitting in draft form, but will be in front of council shortly. This one's fairly straightforward, so I'd put it back to council if there's any questions about it.
Council, any questions? Seems pretty straightforward to me. I'll put a motion to award the tender to electrical, the amount of $66,720 plus GST, and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the agreement. Moved by Councillor Ray, second by Councillor Kent. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next up. Yep. And next up, sanitary collection urgent main replacement Diamond Head Road. Ms. Linda.
Thank you, Mayor Heinzman. As an introduction to the next 4 reports, in order for the public to understand the motions before council and the process here, these are projects where there were change orders and the money has already been spent, the work has been done. According to legal spending, though, we as staff did not follow appropriate process, so we basically spent money without council's official authorization. So we're doing this in reverse. This is a big mea culpa. As the CAO, the CFO may want to comment as our statutory officer as it comes to finance, but As the CAO, I can assure you that we recognize that our current purchasing processes, policy and systems, as well as training and working with staff is in need of repair, no pun intended, as we're dealing with engineering. But that said, I'm not being glib, we do really take this seriously and recognize that with staff. I don't know if our CFO wants to add anything to that. I've covered it. And with that, I will hand you over to our staff who will explain the different projects whereby the spending was unauthorized but within budget. I think that's an important thing for the public to know, is that we didn't overspend, we spent outside of our contracting authority.
And you're coming to us to be able to pay these contracts?
Yes, we need council authorization in order to pay our invoices.
Matt, Chris, do you want to maybe outline the projects that we're done?
Turn me loose. Okay, number one, sanitary collections, urgent main replacement, Diamond Head Road. So as council knows, over the last 5 years, we've been through over 100 kilometers of gravity lines within the community. Lots of those lines have never been flushed, inspected in their history, and some of those are in excess of 45 years old. So there's been a lot of really good work that's been done on the sanitary system, and that's been really integral in feeding that data right into the sanitary master plan, and really looking at the condition and prioritizing the replacement. One of the big challenges for us is Garibaldi Estates. It's some of the oldest gravity sanitary infrastructure that we have. Previously, we'd been in on Diamond Head Road to replace a number of sections of pipe in there and had not done this section because the sag wasn't as noticeably large as the other ones. So it was deferred. But when we were contacted by our operations group at the beginning of the summer about some backups that have been reported and some challenges for them for flushing and grease buildup, we got into it and we went right after it. We issued a request for quote to replace 52 meters of a section that we knew that was a problem, recognizing in that award that that unit rate could go up to 128 meters because that was the distance between the manholes. Once we got into the project, it was clear there was sags in excess of 80% and it was almost 100% plugged with grease. And that had been something that our staff had been in flushing like on a weekly and almost monthly basis. So that's the kind of highlight of the scope. Now, the work was completed at the unit rate that was procured at 52 meters. We just ended up putting in more pipe in the ground. So the difference here is an amount of $55,000, and that was a procured unit rate for replacement in this area. And to give you an idea about what that would take to do is every single day you go in to put in some pipe in the ground, you've got to do a full bypass of people's services and that main replacement to get that done. And we're able to do this whole project in about 3 weeks. So that kind of summarizes the first project that's in front of us. I'd put it over to any questions from council.
Yeah, look for questions from council on this one. Council Kent.
Why that amount of grease in that particular neighborhood?
The obvious question.
Well, no, there's a commercial business that's on the corner of Mamcombe Road and Diamond Head Road that produces a fair bit of grease, and so that's an ongoing challenge. But normally it wouldn't have that much accumulation, but with those amounts of sags and the buildup on there, that even with our guys in there doing flushing on a weekly and monthly basis, it's still accumulated that much. So there's more work to be done, but without picking on the business owner as well, when you have sags in the pipe, everything kind of settles out, and it's not just grease, it's solids as well. And that's unfortunately what we're dealing with out there.
Any other questions? Yep.
Yeah. So it was all per meter price and everything?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So,
Through you, Mayor Heitzman, we put in 128 meters at the unit rate, and we added a number of inspection chambers at the property lines of a number of the houses that none of them, they didn't exist previously.
and
So
it probably actually saved us doing it at the same time as if we'd have to stop and come back to it, right?
all these decisions were made in the pursuit of value for the infrastructure and for the community, so absolutely. And it wasn't something that we could actually walk away from once we got in there, knowing what we knew.
Now, on the grease, so, I mean, if we had businesses, is there any kind of new grease trap or anything that you can put on the businesses that are putting all that grease in there? I mean,
Through your Mayor Heitzman, absolutely. I mean, our staff continue to work within the new bylaw that gives the district more power to enforce issues with the sanitary system, cross connections. A lot of those things are being worked on all over the community.
Thank you.
Heinzman, this is a good example of where, we really are looking to improve our processes, as it's a balance between being nimble and enjoying economies of scale when we're already into a project, and balancing that with legislation and our own bylaws and policies in terms of council authorization. And we are definitely going to look at that as staff in terms of how do we, when it's an emergency, can it go through the CAO with an update to council later? I mean, I really do need to defer to our CFO and more process. I don't want to overpromise, but we really, in terms of being nimble with these capital projects and, ideally saving the money, addressing it while the trench is open, we need to look at a way that we can do change orders. And we don't know what that looks like yet, but that's one of the cruxes that we haven't been able to figure out yet.
It's my understanding is how something is specifically articulated in a tender allows for some more latitude to be nimble while still making sure we're being transparent and clear and within the parameters of our budget. And I think that's the process tweaking that we're looking for through this.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is that helpful? Councillor West?
Yeah, I was going to move it, and I'll speak to it in a second.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? Councillor Elliott seconds. Councillor West?
Thank you, and thank you to staff for bringing this forward and outlining the deviation from policy. And I think as I look at this, it's a sort of a learning exercise for us and how we might consider that policy to accommodate situations like this. The key thing for me is, and I don't want to minimize that, but the key thing for me is the community, I think, was at the end of the day well served by this. Got good value for the work that was done. Work had to be done, and it was done in a very, I'll call it minimal disruption period of minimal disruption. And so I think I don't have difficulty authorizing this payment. So I will be voting in favor of this.
Councillor?
I'd like to have a conversation sometime about grease traps.
And
in
that's
businesses.
not actually related to the motion, but,
Understand.
point taken. I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next.
Okay, number 3, wastewater treatment plant bar screen upgrade tender award. So this is a project that is just a straight tender award with a separate motion there for budget reallocation from an existing sanitary rehab. This is a full compliant policy piece of procurement that's before council. As council is aware, I was in this room in July of this year to award an RFP for the equipment supply for the actual bar screens for this project, where we discussed where we are currently with a 15 millimeter gap in our bar screens, and we're bringing that down to 3 millimeters, and to reduce that process load and to reduce anything that's under 15 millimeters that may be passing through the plant at this time. So what's in front of you is the award for the construction services related to that. So this is installing the equipment, but also because of the reduction in the screen size, there's a certain amount of head loss that requires some of the channels and some of the headworks building to have some concrete modifications to it. As well, from the perspective of these bar screens are in use 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So the constructability of a project like this is always really important to capture that in the design phase. And the way that we're doing it in this project is currently we have 2 channels that are served by 2 bar screens. We're going to build a 3rd channel in that building, install the first bar screen, run all the flow through the plant through the 1 bar screen, because this is full redundancy for our project, and then decommission the other 2 screens and install the final screen. So that's the sequence of construction for this project. This is probably the most important project that faces the wastewater treatment plant at this time. We're also doing the automation project, but really this has a significant improvement on the process and the impact on the environment. We went to public tender on this, and when it closed, we received 3 bids. We reviewed and had some discussions with Bennett Mechanical about the sequence and implementation of the project with our team, and have full support from the team to make that award to Bennett Mechanical and proceed with the construction phase of the bar screen upgrade.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Question?
Given that the screen now is 5 times finer than what it was originally, I guess our collection and shipping out of solids now from that system are going to be up.
Through you, Mayor Heinzman, yeah, there's typically between the grit classifiers and the existing bar screens, we send 1 4-yard bin of each of those, so 8 cubic yards per week, and that goes to the landfill. This isn't the same as solids, so this is on the very front end of the plant. So this is the first thing that happens when sanitary sewage enters the plant. It's stripping out the particles that are going to be now 3 millimeters and over, and as well going through the grit classifier to remove the grit and the sand and the dirt, which goes there. So we're anticipating that that's going to increase by 2 to 3 times, but in the overall impact on the system and certainly some of the challenges that the plant faces, we're thinking that it's definitely worth its weight in gold on this.
Especially downstream, right?
Absolutely. It really improves the reduction of the process load, and that goes all the way through the plant and includes the river. So this is the first step in our treatment process, so this is really a good project for us to move quickly on.
Any other questions for staff? I think this is a great step.
Like to see you so excited about it.
Hey, you know what?
Excited about it.
It's been a busy year, so.
Is it gonna help with all the garbage out there? No, don't worry about it.
We could, I mean, honestly,
Yeah,
they've noticed a difference at the plant. Like they noticed that, you know, it's science down there, and they have, whenever they have an influx in a major rain event, or they have that over time, the reduction in those organics in there, those guys do notice that.
Yeah.
Same goes for the repairs that we do when we have overtime flows, that those flows reduce because we're not having as much infiltration. So the work that's being done in the community is being able to be seen, and
You
these
say
guys
the
are doing-
hardware stores not to sell carburetors,
absolutely.
and for people not to use them. Okay, I had my little piece there. Looking for motion, did we, no, we already moved it. I'll call, no, we didn't move it? Okay, looking for a motion. Councillor Kent, second by Councillor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Sanitary trenchless rehabilitation replacement change order.
Okay, so this one I brought a few samples. I'll maybe just walk these around so they can kind of see.
You just can't talk while you're walking because you won't be able to pick up. Who do you think you are, Terrell?
No, I don't know, is that what he does?
He used to.
I just thought that for this project and just the discussion, we're talking about sanitary on 3 of these reports that I'm doing tonight. So this is, these are some of the
Used
trenchless.
pipes? No, just kidding.
No, those are new. So the big one is that's an 8-inch liner, so that's similar to the one that we're talking about in this report. But one of the challenges with putting in the deep sanitary infrastructure in Squamish is we've got high water table, we've got poor soils in a lot of locations, and it's very challenging and expensive to get these mains installed. So when we've done this work to suggest through the flushing and the camera work and the inspection that the main is okay, as it relates to the grade and how that flows, CIPP liners are an option. And, you know,
Oh, this is?
yeah, so it's cured in place pipe. And so,
Pretty cool stuff.
that's, the smaller one is one for a service, so that's a 4-inch pipe. And so you can see on that piece of pipe specifically, it's got a broken section in it. And you can pass a liner right through that. And even when you feel on the inside of that pipe on your hand, you'll notice it's just a slight indentation on it. So this technology we've used in Squamish on a number of projects over the years. It's proven to provide enormous value. Like the one section that we did on Buckley in the last few weeks, you know, we did that for about $260 a meter in one day. Whereas that project would probably take 3 months at over $1,000 a meter normally and be right in front of a school. So this is really critical as a solution and a tool in the toolbox for the municipality moving forward to deal with the balance of roughly 75 kilometers of some of these old AC mains that exist in the community. The challenge of this technology though is that you can't do it on SAGs. And so SAGs become kind of their own animal, which is kind of the Diamond Head Road example. You've actually got to go and dig those up, especially when they're that bad. It just doesn't work on that. There's a number of other technologies that people are pushing, but I just thought it'd be interesting to bring these so you could get an idea of what we're doing out there. And this is a really good solution for the district moving forward, and that's really going to be noted in the sanitary master plan that's forthcoming. Getting into this specific project, Martech, who's been a contractor that's done a lot of work for the municipality in the last 5 years, really kind of a leader in the industry in this part of BC. This is pretty specialized work, and if you saw any of the work that was going on in Buckley or some of the pictures that were there, there's a lot of equipment and a lot of people required in order to do these liners. You basically gotta wet them out in the resin in the shop, keep them on ice, invert them, blow them through the sewer while bypassing it, cook it with steam for 2 hours to get the catalyst to go, then go back through with the robot and basically cut out all these surfaces and smooth out any imperfections, and away you go. So in order to do, we did 300 meters that day in about, I think it was a 9-hour shift that we were able to do that on. So that represented $260 a meter for that specific project. So that's a bit of the technology. I'll get into some of the details specific to the change order on their contract. But again, this was a function of these, it's a pretty busy atmosphere out there. We're really trying to get through all these 100 kilometers of pipes, and we've taken care of, I think we're up to almost 100 deficiencies and defects within the system just in this year alone. So we really went after it this year. And balancing the reduction of infiltration in the sanitary system with unnecessary pumping and capacity upgrades of the plant is really critical. And so knowing this monster was really critical for us to understand this year, and I think we've got to the end of that. This specific contract, I just listed specifically every change order that exists through that contract as we went through it and the reasons why. Again, that's a function of working within our department for those authorizations to proceed and needing to close the gap in the policy piece to ensure that council's on board and we have those authorizations in place. But this is everything from straight out of the contract. I'm happy to go through these in detail. The big one here for $78,000 is the liner that we did. A number of the other ones were relatively small, and when we found some of the excavated point repairs, that was a separate tender that we issued this year. When we got no interest in that, we really tried to leverage this contract to get as much of that work done as possible, and we did for the most part. We really got a lot of those done as well. Again, we're within the budget that was established for the 2017 capital year, which exceeded 1.6 million, and there's a significant carry forward for that moving forward. But when council sees the updated draft sanitary master plan and the capital planning associated with that, I think it'll be easy to start taking off some pretty big chunks of town and realigning or replacing these mains.
A question on this payment change order. Don't see any. Would anyone like to move it? Moved by Councillor Spell, seconded by Councillor Pryor. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on then. Are we on that one? Yes. Landfill Riverway expansion, lot 69 gravel, Chica gravel purchase.
Okay. So I put a small graphic. It's my artwork, so no criticism on there. But I wanted to kind of illustrate what the development of lot 69 for the gravel pit for the vertical expansion source. We've been actively working up there on the vertical expansion since early this summer, and as we worked, I'll use the mouse there just to give you an idea. But as we worked, the face that's shared on the property line with the existing gravel pit to the south, it became pretty clear pretty early.
Lot 69, just so we're clear.
Yeah, lot 69.
This is a cross section. It's not a
Yeah,
plan.
but
It
not
was
the
listed on
landfill,
cross
lot
section.
69, just so it's clear.
So as we got into this and we're developing the site, as if we were going to just bring down on our property line, we would have had to have kind of kept a prism or a big pyramid here to share between the property line of the neighbor. And because it was already over steepened at the time, what we decided that we would do to be equitable to work with that property owner was, look, we're showing up, let's go out there, we'll take a BC land surveyor, and we'll do a topographical survey to basically freeze in time what the site looks like before we start. After we got into it, we started to, and you can kind of see the faint lines. We've got a phased approach from south to north on that. It's about 25,000 cubic meters per phase. As we got into that, and the need for more gravel at the vertical expansion, based on some of the other ground conditions that we've reviewed in council and have been moving on, is that it became clear that the best value for this project was really to just take that 13,000 tons that was shared on that property line and reduce the risk of having to manage over steepened banks or ongoing kind of battling with, hey, your rock's on my side of the line. So it was really in an effort of value, time, and working fairly with the landowner to the south. Outside of that, again, it goes back to our discussions on authorizations, how we could have come before council to do this sooner or in a function of the tender award, and we were just moving quickly and recognized that there was a lack of authorization there, so coming before council to ensure that we can get that. The alternative to that, of course, was for us just to take a machine and move at $1 or $2 a ton and move all of that 13,000 tons to their side of the line, but that would have been, roughly $20,000 to do that, so it wouldn't have necessarily provided good value for the project or any more gravel that was required. Any questions?
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor.
Yeah, so this is the property to the south
Yes, sir.
on lot 69.
That's correct.
I thought they were excavated all the way up to our property line.
No, well, that's why we surveyed it. So we took a BCLS land surveyor when we got started to establish where is the property line, where is the current topography of that site, and ensuring that we knew where it was before we started.
And so the yellow is the property owners to the south.
That's right. And so it's a function of, it's about 100 meters wide, it's a 10-meter high wall, and that, every meter that we go into our site is 1,000 cubic meters. So each phase of our project in this mine extraction is about 25 meters per phase. And so you're 100 meters wide by 10 meters high, and this triangle that exists that was shared on the property line was the piece that we took that was from the private landowner to the south.
So did you just pile that up for him, or what did you do?
So this report is that we've used that. When we were in council talking about the extra gravel that was required at lot 69 and the vertical expansion project based on the Toburn construction, we've used that gravel. We could have just cast that material to their side of the line and moved on, but there's a few things. Number one, we needed more gravel, and number two, it was an equitable way to just go in there once and take it out and work our way down. As you can kind of see, like that phase, the complete phase of phase one with the dash line, we're into phase two right now, which is fully on the district side of the line.
And all those piles of overburden are all gone? Was that piles that were on top there?
So through your Mayor Heitzman, there's roughly 40,000 cubic meters of overburden left over from previous tenants on that site. That had been,
Steve being one.
pardon me?
The property owner to the south being one of the property owners.
Through Mayor Heitzman, I'm not sure of some of that history, but ultimately what we wanted to do when we arrived on that site, we wanted to freeze it in time by doing a topographical survey so that we understood when we started where our line in the sand was and where we needed to respect the private property itself.
So, just so I understand this, the yellow area up there was gravel that was there.
That's correct.
They probably couldn't have excavated unless they went into our property, so we freed up gravel that they probably wouldn't have been able to sell or use because they would have to go into our property to use it. But at the same token, it allowed us to use more of our gravel that we had because we wouldn't be able to necessarily use the sort of flip side mirror wedge on the, am I getting this right?
Absolutely, that's exactly.
So, I mean, we did allow him to actually free up some gravel that he would not normally be able to commodify, but it also allowed us to commodify more of our gravel lot in doing this.
That's
Am I getting that
absolutely
right?
correct, yeah.
Okay.
And it's kind of equitably on both sides of the line, everybody kind of playing fair to not have an oversteep bank or have an unsafe condition on the site.
Yeah, so I think in principle, the right thing to do. And this whole gravel extraction from lot 69 is saving us a ton of money into the future, so I think all really positive. As you say, we just needed to make sure the process was done properly to get here, but I think overall the concept and the rationale to do it this way is sound, solid. I don't see any more hands, so I'm looking for a motion to release the payment to Chief Gravel. Moved by Councillor Chappelle, second by Councillor Grace. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Corporate Services, Recreation, Culture, council meeting schedule. So, because of next year's election being moved up a month, we're doing this I guess we always do it in December, don't we? Yeah, it's not changed at all, but it's for less time. So there's two proposals in front of council in terms of, do you have those? Maybe if I want to look up in my agenda. There's two proposals, option one and option two. Because of the election next year, there was some discussion about if we want to shift the council break a little bit back into July. So essentially, just pushing the two council meetings that we would miss into July and beginning of August, and still have an August council meeting on the third week of August. And that would be option two. Option one is what we've done forever, which is essentially the meetings in August are waived.
So that's just canceling one.
Yeah. Oh, I thought we were going to shift it. Maybe not. Okay, so, sorry, option two is just canceling the August 6th, August 7th meeting. And option one is canceling the August 7th and the August 21st meeting. Council, any thoughts on that?
I'd like to keep it August.
The way, well, you're not running again, so.
That's the way it is.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on that? From a staff point of view, does it matter?
Doesn't matter. It's a double-edged sword because the break is nice in terms of, are you asking me like how it affects us, or does it matter legislatively?
No, legislatively we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
I just want to, like, it's not just to give council an opportunity to actually have a break, but it also allows for staff to get going on all the budget and the capital projects and basically focus on the work plan during the summer when I have a lot of work plan stuff that's going on. So it's not, there's a couple of rationales there. So I just wanted you to reflect on from a staff point of view if there's a preference.
I do believe staff enjoy the month to work on work as opposed to agendas. But the double-edged sword is that July ends up being insanely busy because we jam everything in, and then September ends up being insanely busy because we're playing catch up. So do we have a preference? I don't think so. That didn't help you at all.
No, it did help.
But we don't have a big preference one way or the other.
Okay. Councillor Elliott and Councillor Rice.
I can say for myself that my sort of annual leave and my childcare summer plans were established based on the belief that August was no meetings. So I would prefer to stay with that, although if we wanted, because there are 5 Tuesdays in July, if you wanted to have an extra meeting, I would put it on July 31st and still leave August clean, rather than put the meeting on the 21st of August. Also, for those councillors that are running again, they'll be focusing on election, and so I don't think it matters either way. But for myself, I've already made plans for August.
Councillor Rice.
Thanks. I was thinking, I mean, it's this term more recently that we haven't had meetings in August. Last term, we did schedule, if I recall correctly, we did schedule one in the month of August. Just one, yeah, as opposed to 2. And I guess my thought this year is because there is an election in October, and I can see September and October going all over the place for people's attention and other things, that it might be better to start off 1 week earlier in August and have a meeting at the end of August as we see here, and to compensate for that, just so that everybody does get about a 4-week break, which they usually get with August, is make sure we don't do anything that last week in July. Don't schedule committee the whole meetings or anything like that. So there is a break there for people who want to travel if they can schedule that. So my thought would be to have one. I'm not thinking about anybody's personal schedules, and I don't mean to dismiss that, but all else being equal, is to have a meeting at the end of August, as shown in option 2.
Councillor Kent.
What she said.
Councillor Chanel. I have to remember what she said, sorry.
Yeah, I was just weighing those two options. What Councilor Ray said is having a week off, like a week at the end of July, or doesn't really make a difference. I'm around this year, but having an extra meeting the week before September is, as a parent, it's the busiest time. I actually prefer to either have all of August or, that last week before school starts is actually horrendous. Getting
That's the 28th?
Yeah.
It's before that, so what their schedule is the 21st.
Currently, there's potentially committee we could theoretically, committee meetings on the 28th, but we're talking about legislatively, we're talking about the legislative regular business meetings now that we have to.
Right, so it'll be the 17th and the 21st, just skip the 6th.
So you're saying yes to the 21st?
Yeah, I'm fine, I'm fine either way, whatever council prefers, it's,
My mom's birthday is the 20th.
you'll be in Georgian Bay.
Well, I thought it would be with my mom usually, but, I'm fine to leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
I would have been okay to schedule it for the 28th, but I realized that the week before school is a little challenging with the kids in school, so, I think majority is saying just leave it the way it is, and August is, yeah, I just wanted to make sure it's sacred. Okay. Everyone okay with that, just leaving, the way it has been in the past?
So does that mean the first meeting September 4th?
That meeting's, the first meeting is September 4th.
So we're good from July 25th right through to September 4th.
Yeah, although we do often have special meetings or on the 5th. We could have a special meeting on the 31st, particularly if we're not meeting in August. We often do need that. So I wouldn't plan to not be here for the 31st of July. It very likely we'll have a special meeting on that day. Okay, okay? Okay,
So add to the motion.
Days off.
Yeah, so option 1, basically.
Yeah, but just January.
Oh, okay, yeah. So there is a recommended motion that January 2nd, regular business meeting is canceled, and that's obviously will not be on the agenda because their staff aren't going to be working. And that August be as per usual. The August 6th and 21st be canceled.
Yeah,
7th and 21st be canceled. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
We have to move it.
Oh, yeah. We'll get a mover and a seconder. Reese and Elliott. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to appointments. I did sort of just scribbling some names here, but I'm totally open to tweaking this. Some people said some parameters about which months they couldn't do. So I just have in here Councillor Chappelle, January and July, Councillor Pryor, February and September, Councillor Race, March and October, Councillor Blackman Wolf, April and August, Councillor Elliott, May and November, and Councillor Kent, June. It was just sort of random plonking it out there based on some of the parameters that people had sent. Everyone okay with that? Any problems with that?
And your attendance so good it doesn't matter for us poor guys.
Okay, so that's a motion? And so the only thing is, in August, we were gonna consider, and Jason's not here to say no to August, so he's kind of in there.
Yeah.
But we were gonna put maybe a first and second alternate, is that the best way to do it? Is there someone who's here for the majority? Councillor Chappelle, would you be an alternate in August? And Councillor Elliott, would you be, is that, yeah,
I'm around some of it.
Okay, so if we can include in that what I wrote there, and that Councillor Chappelle and Councillor Elliott be alternate acting mayors if needed in August.
Just for clarification.
Yeah,
Because the present way I think the bylaw is worded is the next month is automatically available, so September, which would I think be,
oh, and currently it's Ted.
yeah, so September would be there regardless of this motion.
Mhm.
So we're adding 2 on top of
Yeah.
September.
So essentially, if Jason, if I'm not there, Jason's number 1, Ted's number 2, and then it would go to Karen or Susan and Karen.
Okay.
And hopefully, it's not needed, it just allows us to have a backup.
Well, and share the load. It is a.
It can be,
either way.
it can be, there's lots of signing because of all those capital project meetings and stuff like that. So that's the motion, you're okay with the motion? I'll call the question, moved by Councillor Kent, second by Councillor Pryor, sorry, I saw a hand, but I wasn't sure who did it. All those in favor, opposed, motion carries. I hadn't heard if anyone was interested in the Squamish Regional District, so I am recommending that myself and Councillor Wace be put back on, but I'm totally open to discussion. Councillor Pryor?
Should be someone that's going to be running the next term, if you can.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if people are intending to run or haven't decided, they're open.
Well, I wanted to run and I was told because I'm not running.
Well, I think if you've decided
I'm not running
definitively.
again, so you can't be on it, Dad.
Yeah, well, I think if someone's definitively decided they're not running, then it wouldn't be the best idea. But if people haven't made, I mean, we've still got 10 months, so if people haven't made that determination, then I want to make sure it's open. Okay, I don't see anybody else. So Councillor Chappelle and Elliott, I still have you here as alternates, that's okay? Okay. Pardon me?
I finished school in 3 months.
The recommended motion is pursuant to section 784 and 786 of the Local Government Act that the district of Squamish Point, Mayor Heitzman holding 5 votes and Councillor Race holding 5 votes as the district of Squamish representatives to the Squamish Regional District, and that Council appoint Councillor Elliott as the first alternate and Councillor Chappelle as the second alternate. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Chappelle. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
And just a head, if I might, just a
Mhm.
heads up, there are typically regional district meetings in August.
Yeah,
So if the mayor isn't here,
yeah.
I'll probably be here, just so you know.
Metro Treat Advisory Committee, this is, we're just there as observers. They seem to schedule these meetings every time we have a meeting, and we haven't been able to attend. So currently it's myself as the elected representative and CAO Glende as the staff representative. Totally open to someone else doing this. I was thinking, Councilor Buckenwolf's not here, but I was thinking, because he works in the city, that maybe he could be the alternate so that it might fit into his schedule more than someone else's. But these are meetings that happen at Metro Vancouver and Burnaby once a month, but they seem to always stick them on a Tuesday or a SORD Wednesday, or they're just really challenging. But totally open if someone is really, really keen and thinks they have the time. We don't have the ability to participate, but we can listen in as observers. And just a reminder that MTAP is essentially, there used to be something called the Lower Mainland TAP, which Metro Vancouver paid into, as well as we did and everybody else who participated. Metro Van decided this wasn't the best venue to pursue their treaty-related issues, so they created their own TAP, and because then the LM TAP folded, they allowed those municipalities that were outside of Metro to at least come and be an observer, but not a participant in their TAP, Treaty Advisory Committee. That's the history. Everyone okay if myself and Linda stay and we, for now, see if Councillor Buckenwolf is open to being alternate? Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Elliott did express interest in continuing as the library board appointee unless I see somebody else's interest. Moved by Councillor Ray, second by Councillor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. I haven't heard whether Councillor Chappelle or Councillor Pryor want to maintain on the Smoke West Parks Advisory Committee, but totally to open to either or. Councillor Chappelle, you wanted, and I know the meetings have greatly reduced in terms of the number.
They have trouble maintaining that.
What's that?
There is a lot of people not showing up, but the work's mostly done, and they have the plan done, so.
So it's more
four
just-
times a year,
yeah.
Just to check them out.
Okay, and Councillor Pryor, you still want to be the alternate? Yeah. Okay, anyone, don't see any more, I'm happy to move that. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Pryor. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Municipal Insurance Association appointment. This is literally just voting delegate at UBCM. Generally want to make sure it's people who are fairly diligent about going to UBCM. Myself was the voting delegate and Councillor Chappelle and Elliott are alternates. Is that okay with everybody? Everyone can go to the party afterwards. So I'll move that, seconded by Councillor Kent, that Mayor Heinzman be appointed voting delegate, Councillor Chappelle and Elliott are appointed as alternates to MIADC. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And we have a new board appointment. This is for our community forest corporation that we're sharing with the Squamish Nation. Now Shar and I know that it might have been a couple of councillors expressed an interest in this, but we couldn't remember who. Is there anyone who's interested in being on the community forest board? We did talk about whether it should be us or somebody else while the corporation is going up, and I think our lawyers determined that it's best that it just goes straight off the bat and make sure members of council are on the board. I believe that's the process that Squamish Nation is doing anyway, so probably good to mirror what they're doing. Is anyone interested in the community forest board?
How often are we meeting?
Well, it's at this point it's more of
To
make some initial decisions. I think once it's up and running, it will likely be fairly minimal. But at the beginning, it might be fairly regularly. But I think once it gets going, I don't think it's going to be overly onerous. I mean, certainly if members of council don't want to do it, I will do it absolutely. But I want to make sure people are interested. That Councilor Scott,
I'm interested in that.
okay. Anybody else? We have 3 appointees. If we did,
I'd like to find out if it's meeting like twice a week on.
no, it will not be. I think we can help determine that.
3 councillors?
Yeah, 3.
Wow.
3 councillors. Can we do 2 councillors and a staff, or? You
Should
can't-
have a staff.
Right now? Well, staff can still be
Advisory.
advisory to the board. But maybe at this,
I'll-
okay. So maybe what I will suggest, and thus I see a hand, is that Councillor Chappelle, Councillor Pryor, and Mayor Heinzman be appointed to the community forest board. Forest of 1 are, not 2. And this is just a preliminary, I don't think it's, lots of time to figure it out.
Going.
I'll call the question, did we move that? I moved it. Is there a second? Second by Councillor Race. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, everybody. Yes,
Hospital board,
that's
as well as that's in the.
that's through the Squamish-Willett Regional District. And that is simply the Sea to Sky reps on the SLRD board, or on the hospital board. And then the northern part are on a different hospital board.
Excellent. Thanks for.
Yeah. Any news? That's it, right? Okay. Correspondence, there's action requested, and then there's a recommended motion that we refer to staff. I think it's already been referred. The traffic calming and speed enforcement, that was the Valley Cliff one, right? Yeah. Motion to refer to staff, moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Elliott. And just on that file, I know Staff Sergeant Percival and our staff have already been quite engaged with a number of people in Valley Cliff area, and so they're working on a variety of solutions. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That the PEDOG, Provincial Eating Disorder Awareness Week, light up in purple. That we light up in purple in February. I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Do we usually do that in proclamations? Anyway. There's correspondence from D. Hine regarding cycling on sidewalks downtown. There's a recommended motion that we refer to engineering staff to consider traffic violent implications raised in the correspondence. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Chappelle. Is that a nod? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There was a letter from our MP regarding a framework for cannabis products, and that was recommended motion that the council consider giving feedback to MP Goldsmith Jones on the proposed Cannabis Act. Remind me what the deadline, Councillor Elliott.
The deadline is 2 days from now. And I think it is important for our council to give feedback because the funding model is still a one-to-one share between the province and the feds, even though we're the ones who will be shouldering most of the enforcement. And so I'd certainly like us to provide feedback that provides a third, so that it is shared equally between all levels of government.
Yeah, and I think this is the big piece that the feds have missed, is that municipalities, for the most part, deal with policing, with bylaw, with the on-the-ground aspects of this, and yet completely written out of the equation. So I think that's, so just, if there's one issue. Are there any other particular things that we want to speak to? Councillor Rice.
Well, I'm just thinking of the federal side of it, and the only thing I can think of, my knowledge of it, is to open up as far as possible the supply side of it, rather than have it concentrated in few large suppliers. So I think that would just be a generally healthier industry if it was like that.
So that goes to monopolies, and if you do create that, your prices will go up. You still have a black market. You still have criminality. I think
A whole bunch of things, yeah.
fundamentally, the goal from a federal point of view is to reduce black market and reduce criminality. And if they don't have, so how we articulate it in those terms, is that all right? If we and basically ensure that there's competition, is that the best way to open it up?
Diversity of supply.
Diversity of supply.
I wonder too if there's room, as in other industries, for federal oversight. So we may have bylaw enforcement, that sort of thing, but while this is being implemented in the short term, and I don't know if this is part of what's being proposed, but to have federal regulators that if we can't get something enforced, we have someone to call.
Is that federal or provincial?
I don't know.
It's federal legislation.
It's federal legislation, so I feel like it's a federal.
Who are you gonna call?
Who are you gonna call? But that's the problem is that, you know, with many of the dispensaries that were running in larger cities, they basically ignored municipal bylaws.
Just paid fine.
And they just paid fines. They didn't care. And so I feel like if there isn't some level of federal oversight, our hands may get tied. We can only take it so far. We only have the resources to take it so far.
Would it be a suggestion that for, you know, the first 3 years or 2 years, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think minimum 2 years, that we get some support in terms of enforcement and making sure it's established and we're not running into a brick wall where we can't.
Does that make sense, Ben? Maybe I'll let people mull that over.
Well, I wouldn't want to involve any other levels of government if we could get away without it. I mean, enforcement, you just go stop work order, and it's enforced. Well, you do. I mean, what do we want to get the, I would rather say, let's take it all and let's us go for a little bit of the tax money. Instead of going, oh, well, we're worried about this, and getting the feds involved. And one thing, the feds don't want to get involved. They just want a smooth transition. They just want to go, this is what we think. What do you guys think? Okay, go for it. And give us half the money.
I'm not gonna do that.
Well, that's what
Giving
they're
who
asking
half
for
the
at this
money?
point. Well, they want 50% of the tax.
Who's they?
The federal government.
Well, they're taxing.
On,
The proceeds are going half to feds and half to the province and none to municipalities.
so far, that's what's so far. It's still unwinding, and they're talking about backing off on the federal portion of it. I think there should be a municipal portion of it.
So we've already talked, that's already part of our comments. We've already talked about that. That's already part, we're saying a third, a third, a third.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be part of the comments. I think where Councillor Elliott's going now is, we're still taking on all the burden of enforcing rules that both the province and the feds are imposing or coming up with. And there's gonna be, particularly at the beginning of this, a ramped up implementation piece. And so what Councillor Elliott's suggesting is the feds create a support system in the first maybe 2 years of legalization that gives us more teeth to actually action things. What happened in the city, in Vancouver, is bylaw went and said, you're not allowed to be open, here's a fine, every day you're open, you got a fine. They just paid the fine because it was like 1/100th of what they were making every day, and they just paid the fine and stayed open and just completely disregarded municipal bylaws. And so I think what Councillor Elliott's trying to say is maybe there's a transition period where the feds add more support to enforcement. Councillor Race.
Yeah, I guess it's a little hard to see how it'll unfold. I think what people who have been sort of ignoring the law have been doing is taking advantage of the fact that everybody knows we're in transition. And so a lot of people like ourselves, for example, weren't too interested in trying to shut down these shops. But I would expect once the legislation comes through and it's clarified, the police forces would probably take a harder line with things that were happening that weren't authorized by the new legislation. Because the new legislation theoretically will set out the regime going forward. And so there shouldn't be these gray areas. I would expect, like happened in Ontario and Toronto, I would expect police forces to start shutting people down and charging.
Which is
That's
90%
enforcement.
of that. Yeah.
Well, it's we play the cops, absolutely right. But they'll enforce the law. We don't tell them, I mean, we tell them we think there's problem areas and so forth. We've gone through that process, but ultimately they make the policing decisions. So I don't know that,
If it's a criminal, but if it's a bylaw issue,
it's not a bylaw issue. That's the whole point. It's federal legislation and provincial legislation. So it's closer to criminal law or driving offense issues. I mean, that's provincial legislation right now. So it's kind of that thing, which is sort of a police deal. So it shouldn't be bylaw. We shouldn't have to do it. It's not, this goes beyond the zoning issue, I think, now. So unless the police forces just absolutely backed off and people were selling all over the place, frankly, I'd be surprised if that was the case. But I would expect when the legislation comes out, set some clarity in where they want to go, that the police forces will now start to enforce that.
and I think, my perspective, if we start to ask sort of too many things that are a little bit ambiguous, they'll kind of give it the token things, and really the fundamental piece here is cost sharing and making sure we're reducing the black market and criminality of it, because that really impacts our budgets and our communities, obviously. So I'm almost thinking we just keep to those comments. They're gonna, if you dilute it too much, they'll give you these token ones and think they gave you something when they really haven't given you. Okay, so we need to formulate those comments and send them off in the next 2 days. Do you want a motion to that effect?
We don't want the.
Okay, that council provide feedback based on that revenue sharing, one third, revenue sharing with the province and the feds. and that, I'm looking for help, where do you?
Encouraging diversity of supply.
Encouraging diversity of supply to ensure a reduction in criminal activity and black market economy. And that the mayor, CAO, do I have to do it? It should come from me, doesn't matter? Okay. And that the mayor be authorized to provide that feedback to the proposed Cannabis Act. Something like that, but cleaner. Moved by Councillor Race, second by Councillor Pryor. Thanks. Ready? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. Receive for information, there's 2 letters to receive. No, am I getting that right? 4. Yeah, and I'll have to keep this paper. Correspondence for information, there's a letter from Ruth Simons re the continuing UNESCO application. There's a letter from Wendy Booth, UBCM president, on the gas tax agreement, Community Works Fund. There's FCM funding eligibility for municipal carbon emissions reduction plans. That's basically a response to our motion, and basically yes and no. There's another letter with regard to some invasive species. Is there any letter that council wants to have pulled? Okay, motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There are minutes from the Community Hall meeting November 21st, special business meeting November 21st, regular business meeting November 21st, special business meeting November 27th, special business meeting 2 p.m. November 27th, special business meeting November 28th, Community Hall meeting November 28th, and that they be approved. That's a motion. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Recommended motions from the committee of the whole meeting of November 21st that the District of Squamish revitalization tax signature bylaw number 2384/2015 remain in effect, and that council receive an RTA bylaw update semi-annually. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Kent. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Chabot, do you want to oppose that? Councillor Chappelle opposes. Motion carries. Just keeping on track. Recommended motions from the committee held November 28th. Affordable housing program development, that the District of Squamish accept McCullough's development services policy and operational options analysis report, and that the District of Squamish endorse McCullough Development Services Carson's Park Affordable Housing Project feasibility study to endorse a grant application made to BC Housing, which we made earlier today or yesterday. Moved by Councillor Pryor, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Councillor Chappelle?
I am going to oppose this motion. I don't think I can't, until the community actually has been consulted and the financial laying out of having both aspects of housing are presented. I just can't support putting in a grant that may or may not be the project that we're going to be building.
So I think 2 things on that. One is that, as we said in the committee meeting last week, is that we can always add, if we so choose, add subsidized units to this project. That can become part of the formula if that's what council wants. Council direction from a variety, from the task force to our original McCullough, when they first came on board, to the original post, has always been that this is purpose-built rental and not necessarily subsidized housing, that in partnership with whether it's Sea to Sky or whether it's Helping Hands or with some of the service groups in the community, that was going to be a whole other project to these social housing projects. And that's still on the books. This one was always from the beginning, purpose-built rental. From the beginning of the process of this. So that was, that, no?
No, well, sorry.
Go ahead.
Mayor Heisman, I heard Councillor Chappelle say since last week, and I just want to clarify that if that's not the case. The Housing Task Force actually, and we were when we bring this back to council early in the new year, we'll refresh where staff took our direction in terms of working with Macola and what target we're going after with this particular project. There's a spectrum of the core needs housing, the social subsidized, the homeless, all the way across. And the district's focus for this project was squarely in the affordable rental market, like below market and mid-income target. And that was the direction we followed. And it wasn't something that Macola brought forward, but rather it was based off the housing task force strategy.
Councillor Elliott.
So I am supporting this motion. The fact of the matter is that 4 members of the housing task force became the Squamish Integrated Housing Solutions Group and then presented to council and said, we need 221 units of core housing before 2021s. The only way to get those built is to incorporate them into new builds. And so they have a meeting with Macola on the 14th of December to talk about the possibility, because we can't build stuff that they can't get funded. So it's a collaborative relationship between developers, the district, and our not-for-profits to try and get 221 core housing units built. We don't want those built all in 1 or 2 buildings. It doesn't make sense. It's too hard to manage that kind of thing. And so we do have to look for these opportunities, and I certainly recognize that the Housing Task Force was focused on one level of the spectrum in terms of affordable housing. And our community also came and presented to council and said, where we have the opportunity, we need to include core housing. So I think what has been submitted still leaves that open. If Macola and our community groups find a way that they could fund a few units operational.
I think with the new federal piece too, there's more funding opportunities that we didn't even know about until 2 weeks ago. So I think I said that at the beginning of my blah, 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 was that door is still open, and that conversation is still going on. Councillor Chappelle, Councillor Craig.
Thanks. What I saw was a financial model for middle income housing, and when you're applying for a grant, you have to apply as middle income housing and exactly lay out what you're applying for. I can't imagine going after a grant and then adding things afterwards and then saying, well, you know, you've changed our minds. I would like to, when we're taking on a $14 million mortgage with the community and building a community asset, I just think it's premature to do in one afternoon meeting. I had concerns that I expressed at the time. I think applying for the grant before we go to the community groups is premature. And I think that there's always this funding round. And there's even more funding round. And I think that addressing our core housing needs is an incredibly important thing right now. If we had 5 lots and we're saying this is going to be this one project, I would be on board 100%. We have limited land and we have limited resources and limited tax funds. And at this time, I just can't support this one particular grant going forward without fully understanding the financial implications to my community and having multiple plans laid out and the financials laid out, not just here's what it's going to cost, here's what we're doing, here's what we're applying for, because that's what, when you get funding for a grant, that's what you're building. So to go to the community after we apply for the grant, I can't support it, and you're welcome to support it. It's just I can't do it without financial.
I think there's a few things that you said that aren't quite correct, so I'll just maybe get Ms. Glenda to make sure we've got all the facts on the table.
Yeah, I'll start, and certainly if there's any gaps that Mr. Buxton wants to fill in. Where I think staff fell down with this presentation was that it's kind of like a hurry up, apply for a grant, but one of the grants is ultimately a needs gap analysis. It's a, and Gary, I'm sorry, can correct me in terms of the actual name of it, but the grant itself is not let's go out and build what we've designed. The grant is on behalf of BC Housing to demonstrate what's possible. And that's why there was the feasibility. Okay. So I'll have Mr. Buxton clarify what the grant is for. But it's not to go out and build it, and that was also the concern of the community groups that attended the meeting. They were quite shocked because they thought, well, why is this happening before meeting with us? The purpose of this feasibility was to enable us to meet the grant deadline. We are still meeting with those community groups. So I think because the order of things, it created confusion, and so, you know, staff apologize for that. It's not that we're saying this is what we're gonna go ahead and build. And Gary, perhaps you wanna add more
Just
detail?
maybe, there's no talk of getting any $14 million mortgage.
No.
It's BC Housing that would get the mortgage. It's not the District of Squamish.
We'd have to support a mortgage after, don't they? It's a construction build, or that's what I
We,
understood from the
this is,
presentation.
that's
Maybe
not
it's-
the grants that we're approving through this motion. Mr. Buxton,
Which question am I at?
just answer them all.
Yeah, I mean, there is a mortgage component to the project. It's supposed to be self-funding. I mean, I have been talking with the Integrated Housing Solutions Group. They're well aware of those plans. And there's been sort of a general agreement that the core needs components can be satisfied through portable subsidies. It would be very difficult to design a project that meets both, but the portable subsidy elements can come in. We can still do that. The grant application which went in today is simply to get funding to design the project, and you get a better feasibility, you get a better financial model at the end of that. And at that point we can decide what core housing elements we can financially support. I mean, this thing has to pencil out on an operational basis. We're not putting any operational funding into this, and that's almost all of the grant funding from BC Housing these days, unless it's exceptional, is coming to projects that self-fund. So I think we can. I think we can.
That's exactly what I was.
We can meet some core needs housing components in this project. We need to design the project, which may or may not look like what I showed you last week, but it's about $800,000 of money from the province to design the thing. And then we'll know what we can build, what portable subsidy elements and what core housing we can meet. The other thing that, yes, I know that the Integrated Housing Solutions Group said there were 221 core needs housing units needed almost immediately. The Macola project also said there are 1,500 potential affordable housing units needed. So yes, there is a core needs housing. There's also a generic or general housing, affordable housing need. And this is really the principal target. It's not the sole target, it's the principal target. So we're not there yet. It's simple. It's an application for grant funding that'll get us to the next point, and at that point we'll be able to know what core needs we can accommodate in this. And I say we'll work with Megan at the House and Women's Society. We'll work with Laura at Seniors, although they have their own project. Maureen has her project that's proceeding. So core needs housing is being addressed. Yes, are there still going to be gaps? Yeah, there are going to be big gaps on the general affordable housing thing as well. And that's really where this was targeted, not exclusively those.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I kind of understood that from the last meeting, what Gary said there. I mean, I saw this as getting the grant in time as a huge success. I was really commend staff for getting everything done in that tight timeline. And I heard clear last time that there's going to be room for changes along the way, but it was just important to get this first grant application in and that. And we're moving forward, and I think it's fabulous. I mean, I'm really proud of all of us, and us too, because we talked about it for years, and here's something that's actually on the ground, and we got it running, and staff's pushing hard, and I really think it's really one of the big wins in this term is this project. And so, I'm proud of everybody on this one.
Thanks. Councillor Spell.
Thanks. So I don't disagree that it's fantastic to get a grant application in on time. That is an amazing thing, but it has to be for what the community needs. And for me, this project does not meet the test of applying for funding because it's not looking at, to run a housing project, as Gary said, is incredibly expensive. If you're meeting core housing needs, you need to have office space within that building to actually support housing. And what I heard was middle income over and over again, and that we need rental housing. We need rental housing, but we have lots of rental housing coming. there's tons of units being built that are actually rental housing that are $2,000 or less. And when I look online and I see what I can get for $1,500 or $2,000 in this community, I can live with my family in in that sort of unit. So to build an entire project that its only goal is to be that you can actually afford to run it and pay everything, and we're not developers. We're not in need to be developers. We've done very poorly at being developers in our history. And I really don't think that having a housing project that's middle income is something that our community, as I said, if we had immense housing things and we were just doing project after project, I could see the value in that. But taking on a liability we don't have the infrastructure in place, we don't have the staff in place to have a housing authority, we are letting our social services run something that's a financial model. And getting a grant is, there's lots of deadlines for lots of housing grants. This isn't going to be the end of funding. I just think that slowing down and making sure that we're meeting our core needs. If we have to apply for this to design, I just want to make sure that with this grant, it leaves open the prospect for future, for actually putting in youth housing, affordable housing, and meeting those core needs with the office space and the ongoing funding to be able to support a project like that in an ongoing way. So housing, it seems backwards to not invest money into building a housing authority so we can manage things before doing that, and taking on units all over the place. But because we're building this one building, it should be for core needs.
That's your opinion.
That is my opinion.
Thank you. I think Gary's been clear that some core needs are going to be able to be done this, and the feasibility study will help us get there. We have multiple needs in the community, core needs and purpose-built affordable rental for security, for labor force. There's a huge issue. So and the Housing Options Group knows this, that it's a continuum. You have to work on all those pieces because they do ripple effect down and up in terms of where the gaps are and what the needs are. This gets us to the point where we can actually move forward on some housing and can include core needs housing within the project. It can include office space. There's actually a larger than normal community space involved and can easily accommodate the social housing. It could be a housing authority. We're going to have the housing authority conversation in the budget in terms of what's our next step in terms of being able to manage this. It's a bit of a catch-22. You kind of need the units coming on to justify the expense of doing a housing authority, and you kind of need the housing authority to actually manage the units coming on. And so we're kind of trying to do these in tandem. I think this is a great first step. It's proactive, and at this point it's a feasibility study, and it's not a commitment to any actual building of it at this point. Councillor Elliott. Okay, did we move it?
Can I just add one more point or ask one more question of Gary, I guess?
A question.
Yeah. Gary, for the feasibility study, does it include the option to be able to move to that model of is it possible to move to that model of having youth housing and supportive housing with that requires staffing, does that not?
Yes, and to be honest, I've explicitly had that conversation with Sea to Sky and their youth, and there's an agreement amongst us that this is not the project to have youth housing that requires 24/7 support. So we've already had that conversation. So not every project can accommodate the full spectrum of from core needs housing to the hard to house to modest market. We don't have a lot of housing.
No youth housing.
Yes, true. This isn't the project we can solve that issue.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Chappelle opposes. Motion carries. Thanks, everybody. Employment Land Strategy update. That the 2015 Employment Land Strategy update report be received and referred to budget for discussion. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Marine Strategy Phase 2, that the District of Squamish accept the engagement plan as strategic framework for the Squamish Marine Action Plan as presented in the November 28th, 2017 report to Committee of the Whole. Received for information, moved by Councillor Rice, seconded by Councillor Cryer. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Council approve all in-kind funding requests as submitted to the Community Enhancement Fund. I don't have to read them off, do I? No. And that the Royal Canadian Legion be removed from this process in future and not required to submit a report. I can do these all up.
You might want to consider them separately.
Okay, well, those two. Moved by Councillor Pryor, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That council allocate $500 from the 2018 Community Enhancement Grant Fund to the non-profit society.
That's what the name of their application is.
Oh, was it? Okay. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by...
I just want to mention, you're on conflict and conflict.
Oh, yeah, this one. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm
stiff.
Which one is this?
Which one?
This is the breakfast with the mayor.
Oh, right.
The mayor's in conference. So someone to move that? Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
I think everyone carried. All I heard.
You nailed that really well.
Thanks. Council allocate $20,400 cash and $23,500 in kind from the 2018, 2019, and 2020 Community Enhancement Fund to the Squamish Arts Council, and that the annual release of funds be approved based on the fulfillment of the reporting requirements from the previous year. Move. Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Kent.
And that's for the 3 years, yeah.
Yes, for 3 years. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And that council allocate $2,000 from the 2018 Community Enhancement Fund for our Future 2.0.
Oh, I'm a conflict on this one.
This is for the Quest student. Conflict because she works for Quest.
Well, that's the future 2000?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that council support early release of funds in January 2018. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Yep.
Yeah, just on the advisory design panel,
Okay, we're in the business arising from the
oh, I
minutes that
thought-
we've already
oh,
approved,
okay.
not the ones coming up.
No, not the business arising.
Okay, no business arising. Committee minutes and reports, the ADP minutes to be received for information November 16th. Why don't we move that, Councillor Pryor? Seconded, I'll second that. Councillor Pryor, did you want to speak to it?
Yeah, we had a workshop, and one of the things that, it's just hard for the flavor of the advisory decline panel's comments to come through to us. And we're missing it somehow. And so there was some discussion at the meeting about maybe inviting them to a workshop, advisory design panel with council or the committee meeting or something, to just hear or discuss opportunities on how to get their message clearer to us. We're missing a lot of the points. I mean, I try to relay what's being said, but it's more visionary that we're missing. It's the visionary stuff we're missing. But in the workshop, that was one of the topics, and it was suggested that maybe council invite the advisory design panel for a group discussion.
Why don't we discuss it with the chair of the CDC committee and maybe figure out how we might integrate that into a community development committee? Thanks. There's a motion to receive. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Councillor Pryor. Public and Services Corporate receipt for information. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Grace. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Whereas, and then there's some recommended motions that came out of that. Whereas the provincial government has many more revenue options than municipalities, we should just start every motion with that. And whereas regional intermunicipal transit is fundamentally a function of provincial responsibility, the council requests the provincial government to consider a different funding formula for interregional transit compared to interlocal BC Transit service that significantly reduces the municipal share of this provision, and request a meeting with the Minister of Transportation to discuss. Moved by, I'll move it, seconded by Councillor Chappelle. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. That the district authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute amendment number 1 to the 2017-2018 annual operating agreement between BC Transit and the District of Squamish. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. That the District of Squamish direct staff to work with BC Transit to implement the spring 2018 transit expansion, to consider implementing changes to facilitate a Friday, Saturday night service from downtown Business Park to Garibaldi Village. Moved by Councillor Chappelle, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. That the district authorize the chief administrative officer to sign the memorandum of understanding with BC Transit regarding future amendment of the 2018-2019 annual operating agreement for the spring 2018 transit expansion. Now that was pretty. Moved by Councillor Chappelle, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. And that the District of Squamish authorize the Chief Administrative Officer to sign any future memorandums of understanding with BC Transit if it does not contain any new information or cost changes. I'll move that, seconded by Councillor Chappelle. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. We could have probably done those clumps, but I wasn't on it. Fire Rescue 5-year plan. The council adopt Squamish Fire Rescue's 5-year plan, 2018-2022. And that plan be referred to the budget process. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by, I'll second that. What was that? Yeah, Councillor Elliott, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Council staff in-camera announcement. We do have one announcement that the following people are appointed to the Squamish Library Board for a 2-year term ending Molly Loudon be appointed to the Library Board for a 2-year term ending December 2019, and that Corinne Vischer be appointed to the Squamish Library Board for a 1-year term ending December 2018, and that Cass Strong, Louisa Harrison, and Caitlin Rattray be reappointed to the Library Board for a 2-year term ending December 2018. You don't have to move that, that's just being brought forward from the closed agenda. Unscheduled public comment. We didn't have any. Open question period, clarification related to agenda items. Kelsey, anything? Nope. Council or staff announcements?
No.
Yep.
I don't know if it's an announcement, but I met somebody along the river showing me a homeless camp that was wiped out with the high water we had. I said I would ask whose responsibility that is to clean that up.
It depends where it is. Is it in the WMA or is it in the?
Well, it's off the bank,
Some storm.
massive amount of stuff.
Whereabouts?
I would say bring it to staff's attention and they'll figure out if it's us or the provincial government or.
So, Squamish. So, are we gonna get something on the agenda about, remember we talked about the stuff that's in the multimedia, like online stuff, and how staff deal with what they've, I know staff reads all the stuff on there, and sometimes there's some really pertinent things that come up. And, Linda said that.
We did go over this in the committee the other
Well, we
day.
didn't talk about it, I got an email about it, Linda gave sent me an email. But I know it's probably not the right spot to talk about it right now, but we should have a conversation about that, because a lot of pertinent things come up that, I know they don't filter through to us, but, I mean, that particular cleanup down there was all over multimedia there. I mean, pictures and videos, and it's like, holy smokes, look at all this stuff, and then I thought, well, so that was last week, and I'm bringing it up now, so staff should know about it.
Well, as council saw with that email, and I don't think we do want to discuss it at length here, but just for clarity, we do have a process because it is quite, it can be quite a black hole to send staff chasing after social media all the time. We do have formal processes for people to contact us if they have concerns, especially something of that gravity. If there's a large cleanup, they can contact us through our formal channels.
I just think we should have a policy if there's something that's obviously an issue, we should be able to act on it without someone complaining. That's all.
Yeah, I think you understand, I mean, our staff do actually quite an amazing job of keeping on top of social media, but they can't be on there 24/7.
Well, I'm
And
not,
we have formal processes whereby we can get constructive feedback. It's social media, although really valuable and one that is also a passive way of communicating. So give us a call, send us an email, there's feedback forms,
well, I don't know
put something
why-
on our, send us a Facebook message.
the funny thing is that's what I tell people all the time, contact this, do this, and I don't know why they don't want to, but there's a lot of times there's pertinent information that could require an action from City Hall, and instead of, I know staff read it, instead of just skimming through, they go, well, that's actually, maybe I should bring that up. And I just want to make sure that we have an avenue open so that that happens. It's like, oh, there's a telephone pole across the road, I don't know. It just seems to me, I mean, I'm on there a lot and I answer a lot of questions, as many as I can.
Yeah.
And I just see there's a little thing being missed if we read them and don't do anything about it on pertinent things, not talking
And
about.
sometimes they're not, if you see something on there, we only have a certain amount of communication staff, so if you see something on there, any of us see something on there, post something. Here's the feedback link, website, easy. Here's the after hours emergency number, easy. Please send letters to council, easy. And if you see something on there, staff aren't necessarily on Facebook all
I mean,
day.
I forwarded one thing to you guys, and you all got mad at me. Oh, what are you forwarding that crap for?
We did not.
Yeah, that was just a couple of weeks ago. What was it about? Oh,
Never mind.
potholes.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so, and if you see something on Facebook, send something to the CAO.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're aware of something, if any of you are aware of something.
Anything, just be
Escalate.
proactive, send it to the CAO. The CAO can evaluate it and determine who or what, or if it's our responsibility. So, I mean, we do rely on the public to be our eyes and ears out there, but they, it's a two-way conversation.
Well, I mean, I don't mind, I will send things forward. I'm just saying is, I know staff read them. So I'll read it at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I know staff probably read it yesterday at 10 in the afternoon.
The most recent one, Councillor Pryor, was on the weekend. Staff aren't monitoring Facebook on the weekend. They aren't, and I don't expect them to. So you sent something Monday after the weekend, and yes, staff are gonna see it on the Monday, but they're not gonna see it on Saturday morning. So it's okay for you to take some proactivity and email the CAO saying, hey, we should deal with this on Monday. Or if it's an emergency situation, there is a number
Yeah, there's a.
on our website for emergency public works issues.
Well, I mean, not to drag it out, but I mean, my point really is, I do not mind being proactive and do it, and I do my best trying to answer the questions and send links to the OCP and send links to the parking strategy, links to all this. But if it's something of substance, we should be warned anyway. And I don't know if Linda gets warned or Gary gets warned, but I mean, I'm just saying, when someone on staff reads it, they'd go, oh.
If there's, for example, someone posts a drainage issue on
Yeah.
Facebook, firstly, if it's a serious drainage issue, call the works yard, right? Works yard isn't monitoring Facebook 24/7. At the same time, staff do flag it
That's
and
good.
do let
That's what I'm-
staff know. That already happens. That already happens. But we can't possibly be monitoring it 24/7, so we
Well,
do
that's it.
rely on people to be proactive in their correspondence with us. Any more? No, I don't even know if there's anything else to talk about. I think we're already doing what you're saying is what I'm
Okay,
saying.
all right, I mean, I just,
Okay,
I'm just saying.
done. Okay, thank you. So yeah, just quickly, we had a sidewalk competition, design competition with Mayor for a Day last spring, and the winner was Danny Roll, and we went and took her picture with her sidewalk. It's painted up in Brackendale School. It's really cute. It says friends, and she was really sweet and very proud of her accomplishment to design this. It was very sweet. We had a employee recognition event at the Brew Pub last week, and maybe I'll just open it up to CAO Glenda as well, but we honored about 35 staff. About 14 had been here 5 years, and then people had been here, I think there's 3 for 25 years, someone for 20 years, someone had been with us 30 years, and I think we're really lucky to have a phenomenal team, and really want to thank the staff for being so dedicated to the community and doing their job with amazing grace and efficiency and capability. So, you want to add to that?
I just feel extraordinarily fortunate and proud to work with such a great team, and whether it's our new staff that have been here 6 months, the 30-year employee, and everybody in between, it's just such a great time to pump people up and recognize them. We don't do it probably nearly as much as we could or should, because it really, I had one employee come to me after and said, you know, I'm starting to feel a little burnt out, and I was kind of, you know, she's like, I am so engaged again after my manager standing up and saying all those great things about me. And it's just a good reminder that, you know, we all need props, and I'm always happy to do it because we do have a great team.
Just quickly, with my chair of the Regional Hospital District Board hat on, was part of a VCH and the other regional coastal regions, Powell River and Sunshine Coast hospital districts, had an annual meeting at Seashell yesterday, talking about some service level health related stuff, mostly about capital projects and how capital projects here get weighed and prioritized with all the capital projects within the whole Vancouver coastal area, as well as some with Providence Health and a variety of others. I know there's comments in the community about whether or not the planning is being appropriately done for our hospital. According to VCH, we have, I think, the shortest wait times and room issues of any hospital in their district. So they don't see it as necessarily a huge priority to expand the hospital here in the near future, but I'm sure in 5 years from now or so that's going to be an issue. The issues that we are faced with in terms of the crunch on our healthcare system are very different from pretty much every other community out there. Most communities have seniors-related issues, whether it's residents, acute care residents for people, to health with cataract surgeries, those types of things, more health-related issues with an aging population. Our health-related challenges are with obstetrics and maternal issues and babies and orthopedic, crazy mountain bike skiing injuries and that type of thing. So our pressures are very different, and they're obviously trying to balance those needs here with needs Powell River, Sunshine Coast, Seashell, and even down to Vancouver and Lionsgate. They see Sea to Sky, Lionsgate as one community of care, they call them. And so a lot of how they evaluate what's up at our hospital is really married with what they're providing down at Lionsgate Hospital. And they see it, the way that VCH sees it is it's one community of care, North Shore Sea to Sky, and that there's multiple centers within that, and they do different things, and that's how they're prioritizing some of their things. Whether or not we 100% agree with what they're doing down at Lionsgate and what they're doing up here is maybe a topic of debate with them or discussion with them. One of the things they're trying to do up here is they want to increase the surgeries in Squamish, at the Squamish General Hospital, alone, and they've got certain target surgeries that they're going after, but they want to increase it by about 600 surgeries, I think, a year up here, because our surgical units are underused at the moment. So they're trying to balance some of those particular surgeries up here. I'll share my notes with council, but there's a couple hours of meetings, so there's more here than I'm going to go into in detail. Certainly mental health and addictions is very much a big issue for Vancouver Coastal Health, as it is with any health district out there. One glimmer of hope I really found in the conversation was the first time I heard health speak to housing as a helpful health outcome. Still not quite got those, breaking out of their silos, but it was the first time I actually heard housing being actually a proactive part of the health mandate. So I think that's just a little bit of a switch in terms of the ministry and the health agencies figuring out that housing is a critical component of health. So baby steps, but that's good. Let me just quickly go through my notes here. Yep.
I'm wondering about Hilltop House and the capacity of their.
So what they said was that we have the shortest wait lists of any critical care seniors housing, and that it's not, and that we actually don't even have a wait list. And so they, at this point, don't have any plans for expansion of Hilltop House. They have wait lists coming out the wazoo at different, in different communities. I asked that specific question, and they said actually, because they alluded to wait lists, and I said, well, like, what is a wait list? What do you consider a wait list? And they said, we actually don't have a wait list right now. So I think there's perception and reality in whether or not, anyway, so they said from that type of housing, or that type of residences point of view, it's not a priority in Squamish, and there's wait lists galore in other communities that are aging much more quickly than ours and have a much greater, like Seashell than others, where they have hundreds of people on wait lists. So that's just where their priority is. They point blank said it's not under consideration right now. It's all relative, right? But yes. I asked that question. One of the big challenges they have with a lot of their things were built at 40, 50, 60 years ago. None of them are seismically up to standard. They have a huge debt in that regard that they're slowly trying to address. They don't have enough money to address those issues. And anyway, I'm happy to. I'm happy to share some thoughts if you want to have that conversation. I think that's about it. Anything else?
Can we maybe get a heads up before you go to the meetings to just do a little bit of a check-in on healthcare before you go, so we can advocate a bit more for needs at the board meeting? I know it's a slow idea, but
Yeah, no, so
Squamish, it's a Squamish hospital.
Yeah, this is a once-a-year meeting, and it's mostly for VCH to just give their State of the Union. We do have, they do come up to the SOID. I'll get you the dates on that, but they are up February? March?
Yeah, asking for money usually.
Yeah, so that is coming up. Yes. Anything else? Don't see anything. Motion to terminate. Moved by Councilor Kemp, seconded by Councilor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.